realized that history tends to repeat itself. So we found that in the 1970s, Zakes talks about Maria, talks about Nikki and Mambe. I think that's how you say her name, and how the afrikaaner men in the town of Excelsior would force themselves on them and have sex with them, and they didn't have a choice. They had to just let themselves be in the hands of these afrikaaner men. They had to allow themselves to be taken advantage of. It felt like they didn't have a say at all. And you find that this is still what is happening today, that history keeps repeating itself again and again. And my question is, how can these things be stopped? How do you manage these things? Why is it that we find ourselves going through the same issues that have been taking place since the 1970s and even earlier? Way earlier.
I think like this book, for me, it also talks about, it strikes a nerve for me in terms of how the Afrikaner people really changed the mindset of the black people. Like, obviously we know apartheid was more of a psychological thing more than anything, because you had these men who treated these black women like a pastime thing. It was like a sport. It was like a hobby to go shop around for a black woman and to go sleep with them, and then give them money because you're giving them something they don't have, and you hook them in to the point where it doesn't feel forced anymore. And then now it becomes normalized. Because if you remember in the book, Johannes Smith was the one who was really, he really liked Nikki, and he'd always want to get into her pants, and eventually he did that. The sunflower. Eventually he got her, but she really didn't like him. She liked Stephanus Cranier, the guy that she was working for. So for her, it was wrong when it was with Johannes, but with Stephanus, it wasn't wrong. And it moves from, because towards the end of the book, she says to Johannes, "You took my girlhood." But with Stephanus, it was more of, because I connected with you emotionally, it wasn't forced, and so it was okay, and it was normal. And for her, it was like a normal behavior, even if she knew that she's working for this man and his wife, and she's sleeping with another woman's man. It became something it became so normalized, in her psyche, that it didn't even look wrong. It didn't even feel like it's forced. So, and it became this passing time thing, because now it becomes a little secret, all of them. Because if you remember in one of the chapters, they were at that barn where there was the pastor.
That was rough.
There was Stephanus, there was Johannes, there was all of them, the orgy, and the fact that these women traveled all the way from their township to the barn, not forced. They willingly went there. It shows that this thing, it's gone way past rape and being forced. Now it's something that is normalized and a way of life and making money, and now it's moved to survival, because they knew that we're getting this money if we sleep with these people. We need to eat. So therefore, let us just carry on with what we've been doing, business as usual. We'll deal with the consequences later, which I didn't think they realized how dire they would be. So for me, it shows that this thing, it's so psychological, and that's why we are struggling to break the pattern generationally, because if you look at Stephanus's child, I can't even pronounce his name. What's his name? Jarkonia. Yes. The fact that he used to take care, Nikki used to take care of him. She was his nanny. And then but for him, it was a sexual thing, because it became this thing, okay, my dad and the white people in our society are doing this with the black women. So this person, I don't see her as my nanny. Marang Pepa, as a 4-5-year-old, I'm getting aroused by my nanny.
5-year-old.
Yes. So that's why this thing is so embedded. It's so hard to break the cycle, because if a 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old is already seeing the nanny in that way, he always wants to piggyback on her because he's getting aroused by that. It's very hard to break that. It's so psychological. It's so deeply embedded, because as our child as they grow up, they follow suit.
So doesn't that maybe answer her question that how does it stop, you know? Because now you said that it starts like when the child is very young and whatnot. Maybe teach the young ones differently. Maybe how they look at a woman, for example.
I think something that I picked up is that back in the days it was so normalized that women kept quiet because they know that you're doing it, we're all doing it, so no one's gonna call anyone out on it. So we're all doing it, we're all fine, it's normal. You know, when it starts, obviously you're embarrassed and you keep quiet about it to a point where it's life.
Yeah.
You know, and it has continued over the years where women are walking around with these things, knowing that at home this is what's happening, in my neighborhood this is what's happening, my friend is going through this, my friend's father, the works, you know, and we grow up, and it's so normal to see these things happening that now, in a current society, after the Karabo case, people started speaking about it, and you realize that so many people have been going through so much of this, and I think we also raised as black girls to be like, you know, hold on, you know, taralila, whatever it is, even in marriage, people are going through things, but you're raised in taralila because that's what they were taught and their parents were taught and generations and generations. But for us now to start speaking about it, I think that's one way for us to start breaking the generational patterns, making the young ones aware that when someone does this, don't allow that to happen. When someone speaks to you like this, don't allow for that to happen, you know? And I think one thing that I picked up from the book was Zakes was helping us to see it from the other side. You know, so because we're black people, so we see it from our struggle and we see it from this side. And he's helping us to see it from the white people's side.
Yeah.
You know, of course you did his research and spoke to people. So from their side, you know, it also stirs up anger when you actually see it from their side.
Yes.
They were having so much fun. They were having a good time. They were rejoicing in our misery. You know, even when they were in court, the women were in court with the babies.
Yeah.
You know, and the guys had bail because they got the money, you know, everybody's doing their own things and they're continuing. So you get to see that the segregation of that, of our nation and our society, that from that point, to be like, okay, this is how they experienced it, you know, when they see Nikki and Poppy, you know, walking down the street, they remember her as the girl that was begging outside of their teapot. That is how they remember.
Yeah.